Welcome to the Heme Consults video orientation series. This is video number 12. We're talking about evaluating thrombocytopenia. So thrombocytopenia is not very exciting because it happens so much. You'll get so much thrombocytopenia, you'll be tired of thrombocytopenia. The thing about thrombocytopenia is that when teams call, they're like, oh my gosh, does the patient have HIT? They always think the patient has HIT, especially if the patient's coming from the ICU setting, but it's usually not. The reason for thrombocytopenia is usually more boring than that. Usually it's sepsis, it's DIC, it's thrombocytopenia or critical illness. So there are many reasons for thrombocytopenia. But here's ways to think about it as well. What was the patient's baseline platelet count before admission? And many times it's important because the patient had normal platelets consistently, and then they came to the hospital and their platelets plummeted. That's important. It's either something we've done to them here, medications, or something that's happened to them since they've been here, they got acutely ill. And so it's always important to figure out, well, what's the historical path? Because it leads you one way or the other. You may be less anxious if you're like, well, this is new, and it probably related to something we're doing, and it probably recover when we stop. Versus, oof, insidious onset. The thrombocytopenia has persisted for 3 weeks. What's going on? So you want to know the history, and getting the baseline platelet count is helpful. The other thing to think about is what are the underlying conditions that may help explain the thrombocytopenia? For example, does the patient have liver disease? Do they have a known prior history of ITP? And these are all things that are helpful as well. Okay, many times people will say, hey, does this patient have HIT? And whenever they do, you want to ask them, hey, what was the 4T score? And invariably, they mostly haven't calculated it. But if they have, that's helpful for you. And if they haven't, it nudges them a little bit to say, hey, don't call me again with HIT until you've calculated the 4T score. And if they want to, if they're willing, you could calculate the 4T score together. But it's important because everybody's looking for HIT, but we want to make sure that people are thinking that the pretest probability is helpful as to help you decide whether or not you actually send the testing. Okay, ask what medications may be implicated. There's so many drugs that cause thrombocytopenia. And so you want to go through the list and make sure that you are not missing anything. Then think about evaluating for nutritional deficiencies. Think, could the thrombocytopenia be explained by either nutritional deficiencies, especially if they precede the hospital admission, or could they be exacerbated by nutritional deficiencies as well? And so, yes, I do check B12, methylmalonic acid levels, and folate as well to make sure I'm not missing a source of thrombocytopenia. Sometimes, especially if there is pancytopenia, I might also check a copper as well. I invite you to have a list of labs that you have in mind. So when somebody calls and they're like, oh, the patient has thrombocytopenia, you're like, okay, do these studies, and then we'll see the patient. You want to make sure that labs are cooking, and you don't have to stop, go read about it, and then share recommendations. You're going to see thrombocytopenia a lot. So have your own default list of things that you want to check for every time. All right, I'll see you in the next video.